Know if you can hear me. Excellent, everybody. Great to see you all here. Thanks for coming. Thanks for showing up today. Just let me know if you guys can hear me. Will somebody let me know? Can you hear me? Okay, great. Yay. Okay. So, thanks for showing up this evening. I hope you all are well. It seems like we've been having a really long course together with everything. It's been interesting because we kind of started on this journey when it all started, and so we're kind of a team seeing us through it all. So that's kind of fun, or not, I guess. I'm not sure. But we have a couple of things that we'll get to today. We'll get to that case study and go over some things with that. But I just wanted to start off with answering any questions that have maybe come up, anything that maybe you're particularly struggling with, or it's not sinking in, or whatever the case may be. And that can maybe guide a little bit about what I can help you guys with next. I'm glad. It's been fun. It has been fun. Okay, so we're going to look at the case study, but do let me know if you have any questions. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about this case study then. Essentially, being able to put together a good treatment plan will be of your best interest in order to build a solid foundation in reflexology. Okay, we have a couple questions. We will get to Kay's question in terms of the nervous system because it depends. And then, I'm going to check and see the chart that we have, but unfortunately, yes, it is black and white on the exam. But to be honest, I've looked it over, and none of the places that they're pointing to or whatever are some of the really hard ones that you see in the book, as I recall. So I really wouldn't be too worried about it. I've mentioned in the notes going through certain things, making sure you remember the bronchial area, remember where the pineal gland is. Some of those things I've talked a little bit more about. Make sure you know those, because that's what can trick you up with either words or with losing the location, which you see is in the heart. We, as reflexology therapists, tend to get fixated a little bit on the fact that the heart is there, but we do need to remember that it is the entire chest area. So there is other things going on in those locations. When talking about the key reflexes, do you just have to memorize them, or is there a thought process that goes on? This is where the training comes in. Probably right now, you will have to memorize a couple of things. It would be in your best interest on cue cards to have nervous system on the front, and then perhaps the parts of the nervous system on the other side with at least one or two of their functions. Then when you get sort of that basic understanding and knowledge from, you start to learn a little bit about more about the functions of each of those areas. And then you start to delve into the intercorrelation between those areas. Everything is always intercorrelated. So when somebody presents you with a complaint, it really is a big puzzle, because whatever that person is coming in with is going to be unique, even if the complaint is the same. You have to find out what it is that's unique about that person, because it's in the subtleties of their questions of where you find the answers. And that's sort of where you'll hone your skills in terms of key reflexes. So right now, it's probably a little bit of memorization, memorizing a little bit of their function, moving through, starting to build that intercorrelation with them. One of the major ones we talked about is the pancreas for the endocrine and the digestive system. We also talked about the hypothalamus being the nervous system and the endocrine system. So it's those types of intercorrelations that when somebody presents you with a complaint and then displays physical, emotional, mental symptoms, that you can take a look at all of those. So it's hard in a case study, which is why I'm giving you freedom. I'm giving you freedom to think a specific way, and I'll see it through your work, which is why I want you to put the systems and some reflexes from there and some key reflexes. So what that shows me is if, for example, we have somebody with a headache. Well, we all know that the person could possibly have headaches for multiple different reasons. So pick one. And so example would be, maybe it's a hormonal migraine. Well, that would be different than if it was a nervous system headache or migraine. So if the information isn't there for you to make that decision, make the decision yourself, and put yourself into their shoes. Like, what would I be feeling if I had these symptoms? Well, I would probably be feeling moody. I would, all of those things. Okay. So when it comes to the key system, you have to basically think about what system is that part in. That would probably be your key system. But then not necessarily, say, for example, yes, you would most likely work the whole system. I mean, it just doesn't make complete sense. However, this is the trouble I get myself into, as the person comes in with digestive problems, body pain, blah, blah, blah. I end up dealing with 3 or 4 complaints in one treatment, instead of just focusing on 1 or 2. But then you have to start really navigating, what key reflexes am I going for? What are going to be my top hitters? And I think, it is kind of like your common denominator. So if you were to list all of the symptoms and then all of the reflexes that would go with all of those symptoms, you would probably pick the one that showed up the most, right? The most common denominator for symptoms. That's how you would ultimately think about what your key reflexes would be. Okay, I've got stomach pains. It's really tight. It's worse when I'm stressed out. I get it around exam time. Or I get it around my period, or I get it around my parents when they're fighting. those subtleties tell you what system is ultimately causing the problem. It's in the subtleties. You don't need to get into the subtleties with the people. You just need to understand and you need to listen. So I would work a specific, I know that it's, say, for example, the stomach. I know it's in the digestive system. It's not in any other system. So my key system would be my digestive system. I would work the stomach, right? And I would work then my other key reflexes, which would be maybe solar plexus, because depending upon the symptoms, or maybe the spleen, if I thought it was something else, would be my other key reflex. So this comes over time, but it's a thought process that I teach people how to deal with a case study in a very thorough and investigative, I know it's not a word, but really investigate the client and solve the person's issue. I don't really, I wish I could throw chapter 16 out. I wish that it was more about, in this class, teaching you how to become a care designer. I will never ever look up, how teachers are supposed to have exam keys. I am never ever, for the case study, ever going to look up and compare your answers with the exam key. I need to see that you're thinking about things. And even if you're wrong, if I can somehow link it and you're thinking and, you're not giving up, that's the passion. That's the goods right there, right? Because at the end of the day, we could just work the entire feet. That's plain and simple, right? But it's the difference between, entering at sort of your basic level or ultimately raising the bar for yourself right away. Okay. Well, yeah, it's good to formulate your thought process around this, and I think that is partially when you're giving an intake form, being able to have some sort of shorthand or some sort of pictures. Like for me, I'd rather draw symbols and pictures and lines and numbers to write a lot of communication rather than a lot of words. So people take their case study a little bit differently. What I do in the first treatment is I always have my foot chart with me, and I'm always making notes and treating it like that. That's why my first is an initial consult. My initial consults are 90 minutes for $189. And it's extremely thorough. There's therapists that aren't that thorough. So don't beat yourself up, and don't, it's just sort of the groundwork for, if you can think a little differently, that's the good part. So yes. Tahira, maybe reword your first question about if a client comes in with a condition, how do you divide your 60-minute session? Well, ideally it would be 30 minutes for one foot, 30 minutes for the other foot. But we all know that we book to the hour and they show up. So you end up with 55 minutes. It's pretty intense to get through a full foot routine. It takes a good 45 minutes to 60 minutes when you have the foot routine sort of memorized and doing it. In the beginning, it will take you a little while. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, I get it now. Ugh. So client comes in, they take their health, they do their health intake. I get the form back. Immediately, I make a picture in my head about what could possibly be going on based on how they're um, responding on the form. Then I don't talk to them at all. I bring them into the room and I just, especially if they're new, I'm like, hey, like, how did you even hear about me? And okay, great. Like, what is it that you think I can help you with? Um, and then they start to talk a little bit about their story, and I interrupt them sometimes if it keeps going a little too long. And I'm just essentially looking for information to be able to help me put that puzzle piece together very quickly. So then while they're talking, okay, so ideally what would happen is I would say, oh yeah, great. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to, so I'm usually with new people, I'm like, so I'm going to poke around at your feet today. Why don't you go ahead, take your socks off, hop up on the bed. I'm just going to need you to lay flat. Your knees will be over this pillow, and I just need your feet to come down to about here on the table. Cover yourself with the blanket, get all nice and cozy, and then we'll chat. Okay, great. Once they have them on, they're all settled. It's like, okay, like, so tell me what comes in, what goes on. Okay. I talk a little bit and then I say, okay, great. So what reflexology is going to do for you is I'm going to work on some of these reflexes. I'm going to test into them. You know, how the nerves should behave is that there's a little bit of sensation, but it doesn't make you want to jump to the moon. Okay, so if it gets to be around that intolerable level, let's have a little conversation. We need to document it so we can help figure out sort of what your puzzle piece is. Okay, great. If I get to a point where now he's giving me probablys and maybes, or she, then I'm like, okay, let's just get started. Let's just figure out what's going on. I take a quick observation of the feet. Notice any puffinesses in the reflexes that I've built in my brain already. I take a look at the feet now, observe, see if there's any puffinesses, any indications on the feet that would give me any kind of solid information towards any of the key reflexes or systems that I pulled up. And then that happens in like quick little glimpse. Immediately, then I'll clean the feet, and I use a hot towel. So I use it as a time to ground and to let them know, like, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to test some reflexes. Most likely they're going to be tender. It's all good. We'll come back and test them afterwards and see what we got. Does that sound good? Okay, great. So then I will test those specific reflexes, especially if it's become predominant in my mind that it's a reflex. Plus, if that it has an indication on the foot, I'm definitely going to test it first. Okay, so that might be only 3 or 4 reflexes, but you need the foot and you need all of that stuff, which is challenging on the written exam. Then so that's why I always say, like, start with 5. If you don't get 5 key reflexes, don't even worry about it. Like, let's say it's just 1 to begin with, where you're like, wow, this guy's stressed. He's not pooping. He's, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You're like, okay, I'm going for the gusto. I'm going for the solar plexus, right? Like, just kind of see where that one system is at or something. but just so you start with that thought process. So then you test the reflexes. Okay, great. Is that tolerable, intolerable? You can also use a little bit of a pain scale. The pain scale gets annoying after a while with clients. So you kind of go, okay, tolerable is, when we are around 2 to sort of 6. Anything above a 6 gets us into that intolerable range. So just kind of let me know how you're doing. And so then they're more comfortable. I'm like, okay, intolerable. They're like, yeah, it's like a 7. You're like, okay, cool. All right. And then you mark it down, and that should really, the testing of reflexes should really only take a couple of minutes. And then essentially I would move into my routine. I would think about, do I really think I need to spend a lot of extra time in that one area? Just, maybe a couple of passes, right? Normally I'm doing, let's say it's the liver, I'm doing 3 passes on the liver. Well, maybe I'm going to do 6 passes on the liver. Well, that's only going to take me an extra 5 minutes. But if I now then with some clients where I need to work the whole meridian, maybe I need to do some facial work first. Maybe it's a complicated situation. So you have to start navigating your time around that. And that's sort of where you'll get to when you're ready for the RCRT exam. So please do know that I have higher expectations for my students than most. So don't feel bad if you have one reflex. It's better than memorizing a book. Please don't memorize a book. Use it for a guide. I'd say take out the chapter. If somebody comes to you, I used to have a computer, and I would do consultations across from my people, and I would have an iPad, or I had my big screen computer. And there would be lots of times where they'd come, they'd have a condition or they'd have something, and I really wanted to know what it would do metabolically. Like, I'd literally look it up while they were there. They wouldn't even know I was doing it. And I would see how it would kind of be working in the body, so I could figure out what key reflexes would be good for them. Okay. So then I would wrap up one of the feet, right? I've cleaned them, dried them, and then I'm moving into my session. So I do my relaxation techniques. There's been some times where I don't do the relaxation techniques, but I highly recommend it. And I move into it, and then I come back at the end of the session, retest those. Maybe along the way you actually found some, maybe the groin is super tender or something that doesn't seem, it seems a little illogical, especially for what's going on, but maybe it's linked, right? You can ask them, hey, what's going on in the groin area? Then you maybe think, even with groin, think about circulation getting blocked off if there's blocks in the groin area. All those things to help build a picture. Then when you're done with your client, you've done, your leg massage or the solar plexus push breathing technique. Okay, great. Thanks for coming in. This is sort of what we found out. Some of the reflexes that I thought would be tender were, and then you practice what I taught you before. Great. So most people get the most benefit when they come for 3 treatments on a weekly basis. That way we can get a really good baseline of how you're responding to the treatment, and you should have some really good results by then. Does that sound good to you? And we can re-examine at that point. Okay. And then you go, great. Is daytimes or evenings the best for you? Okay. Now, I hope that answers most of the questions. I kind of that was a long-winded, but hopefully now you've had me say it enough, I guess, if you will, that it is becoming more clear on how you would do that. Okay. By all means, When I first started, I just did the foot routine and I prayed that it was working. So you will do phenomenal work by following the routine. And that's exactly what your practical is for. Okay. It's for learning, it's for discovery, it's for all of the fun things. And the most beautiful part is that most of your people will get improvements and there will be changes and it will be really exciting for all of you. So I'm excited for that. Okay, we are going to go over the case study, but you guys are going to be presenting me with most of the information. So if I go like this. Oops, that's not what I want to do. I've been doing a lot of iMovie stuff, so all my buttons, my shorts are different. Okay, this client comes in complaining about weekly migraines, and it's particularly bad during weather changes. This client also struggles with incontinence, especially during exercise. This client deals with gas and bloating on a regular basis and has just been told by their doctor they have an enlarged thyroid. From the intake, you can observe this client is always busy. Things always need to be done to the perfectionist level. This client asks about weight loss and if reflexology can help. So this is a familiar case to me. What the reason why I wanted to share this case with you was because I went to a trade show, one of my very first trade shows. And I was giving some sessions, and this lady sat down in my chair, and it just so happened then she became my client, and I would actually drive out to her house. Crazy. She was one of the only ones that I was driving out to her house to give treatments to her and her husband. And she referred me to a gal that used to make some clothing for her store. And then somehow, I can't remember exactly how, she convinced her daughter and her granddaughter, her daughter's daughter, to come and see me because of these migraines. So it just goes to show you the potential of things that what will happen is that people who have become unwell because of stress and lots of other reasons, not just on the physical level, it will all start coming out. Okay, so I wanted to give this case to you because it's a real deal. So what would you think about this case? How would you explain the benefits for this client? Yes, the client is female. Why do you need to know, James, if the client is female? Yes, for sure. Yes, very good. Very good. You just say something, what's in it for her, and or what's in it for them, and we go from there. So I think that's absolutely um, a good way, right? What other things can we say? Exactly. I think it's, whether or not you were to say, you know what, everything gets better when you get better sleep. Let's put you into that parasympathetic nervous system response. Um, right on the endorphins and the circulation. Yeah, exactly. Right. With bloating and gas, she could have, so, I mean, does it happen often? Do you always have it? No, it's just sudden. Or, yeah, I kind of always have it. Well, when does it get worse? After I eat. Well, okay. Help them maybe narrow it down a little bit. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Those are all very good things. And rightfully so, the client is coming to you. I mean, if they're coming to you for reflexology, they've most likely heard about it. They're most likely already into this kind of thing. They're already into the natural health. So um, it's really talk to them on their level and make them feel comfortable and confident. Good. So let's first start then with listing all of the symptoms that we have in here. What would you consider a symptom? Exactly. Super non invasive. Side effects suck. Go ahead and tell me what are the symptoms. Okay, so when it comes to this case study, or how I always read case studies, is I always typically, let's say this was the list of complaints. You know, I asked her to list her top 10 complaints. This would sort of start with the first and move through for me, kind of like reading a recipe card. The ingredients with the largest amounts are first. It also goes to show that complaining about weekly migraines, and it's particularly bad during weather changes. Okay, so symptom, I'd put weekly migraines. I'd put a little note beside it, weather changes or barometric pressure changes, right? Worse with pressure. Yeah. So then this client also struggles with incontinence, especially during exercise. So muscular, I'm thinking muscular. I'm also thinking if I look at as well enlarged thyroid, weight, I'm thinking her hormonal, her hormones are whacked. That's the technical term. And that's most likely playing a part on her digestion, and she's dealing with some gas and bloating on a regular basis as well. Okay. I'm not going to focus too much on the enlarged thyroid. I'll work it, but yeah. Well, this is the thing about weight, right? You could say weight loss is, I mean, it's all of those things, right? It's weight loss is hormonal. Weight loss is, it can be mental. It can be emotional as well. It can be all three of those things. What I'm looking at is her hormones with a lot of the things. That's sort of my underlying thing here that I'm looking at. Okay, so we've got migraines, incontinence, gas bloating, and she's always busy. Things always need to be done at the perfectionist level. So she's on super high alert with stress, which is also hormones, and a little bit of neurotransmitter imbalances. And so I'm thinking nervous system as well. And then weight loss. I think it's also too. Yeah, it's you never know with the weight loss. Okay, so based upon those symptoms, we have then sort of our key systems that we would be working. Okay, some of you guys mentioned some of those systems that you would work. Okay, but let's go to the top 5 key reflexes. So how you would have done this during your initial assessment is most likely you got from chapter 16. Great. But what I hope you did is that you took the reflex and you looked it up, okay? Or you looked up what it was that was going on and you understood why you would work that reflex. You chose that key reflex because you understood what it does in the body, and it's good for that, okay? So that's what I would maybe suggest, is that when you're doing your practical, is that you would take their case history and then take 5 minutes, or 10 minutes, bring chapter 16 and bring some notes and look up why you would do what you were doing. I think you'll have a better experience. But let's think about what our 5 key reflexes that we would work for this person are. Yeah, exactly. And don't be shy, spout them out. We could have 10 different key reflexes. It's not a problem at all. I'm sure there could be majorly different key reflexes. Yeah, adrenals are going to help with a lot of times why there's incontinence is because there is a microinflammation in, which is why they tend to give steroids. There's a microinflammation in the urethra, and the person's so adrenal fatigued that they just don't have what it takes to fight the inflammation. So the muscles actually can't deal with what they're dealing with. And then obviously look at their water intake. To be completely honest with you, you could do solar plexus, adrenals, hypothalamus, and pituitary for every single condition, and you would not be wrong. If in the beginning, this is probably a move I would make. Probably in the beginning, I would be like, okay, we're going to test these key reflexes specific, for what's going on here, and you pick those ones, and guaranteed they have higher sensation. They're always much tender. I'd be like, okay, interesting. We've got some imbalances here. We're going to work through it together and see how you feel at the end. Well, these key reflexes, giving them an extra love and attention, they're going to basically be stoned after the treatment. And we'll have relaxed them, and if not, put them to sleep. So you'd be doing them a really great service. So you can totally, why not do that in the beginning? Meanwhile, you're thinking in your head, oh, great. I know Erica wants me to do these, key reflexes and all, but not there yet. It's totally fine. Okay. So you could definitely work all of those. Bladder for the incontinence. Exactly. Thyroid. Well, it's part of the whatchamacallit. I'd probably get to it just in the routine, but it could be a key reflex for sure. Major stress. So solar plexus is definitely a key reflex that you're going to work. because it will just help to, when somebody's in shock or when somebody's on high alert with things all the time, when somebody's operating at Mach 10 all the time, you're not gonna get the real picture, right? You're gonna get the strung out cord, if you will. So there's going to be more irritability. There's going to be more of some of these things, right? So maybe once you release the solar plexus, you never know. Okay. Gas and bloating, man. I hate that. I hate that symptom, to be completely honest with you. It's the symptom that still manages to boggle my mind because I've seen it with fever. I've seen it with allergies. I have seen it with pancreas, undiagnosed sort of hypoglycemia, diabetes types of people. By the way, you can see, I shouldn't be throwing the word diabetes out there, but you can see uncontrolled sugar levels in the blood by the left foot. If it were, I'm on the screen right here, this were the left foot. Maybe I show this with you guys already, but right here on the left foot, if it's red, most likely it's just undiagnosed, uncontrollable blood sugars. The deeper the red, the bigger the imbalance. So yeah, gas and bloating annoys me. So yeah, I would probably end up working the whole entire digestive system for that guy. And yeah, great. Amazing. Yeah. So, I think that's about it. What I would, the left foot, the lateral edge of zone 5 below, along the metatarsal there. If it's red, the more red it is, I mean, that's obviously if the foot can't all be red. Like if you have an engorged red foot or a red foot in general, no, it has to stick out. It has to be an indicator. Yeah. Well, yeah. We would list and mark all these areas. Yes. So the case study is 43 marks. Basically, you would list and then you would draw the reflexes on to the exam. Which brings me to my next point, is that what you see on, you will actually have a blank foot chart on the exam. You obviously won't have the names of the reflexes on that chart, but you will have the chart available there. Okay, so if by now you haven't figured out where the little funny things are on the feet, then that's totally fine. Don't worry about it. They kind of give you a little trick on the exam. They have everything there except for the names, obviously. So then if we're talking about the reflexes, I think, was there anybody that wasn't able to get 25 reflexes? Because I would suspect, this person's stress. Let's go back to the what factors can affect tenderness. So, of course, if somebody's at Mach 10, that's going to affect the level of tenderness. So now you have to kind of move your scale up a little bit because they're going to be tender. And then you're going to have, perhaps if you have from session to session, random different ones that are tender. That's a lot of nervous system and going back to the senses. What did they see that week? What did they hear that week? What did they touch that week? What happened? It's in those subtle details. Perfect. I would definitely be working the brain. I would be working the pituitary because that's also in through the frontal cortex. And that's sort of where some of the neurotransmitters that in the brain of how we could work that. I'd also be working this person's eyes because of the barometric pressure. I'd be working the neck a lot because a lot of times when the pressure gets heavy, the client becomes very stressed and very heavy and tight in the neck. So I'd be working the neck and shoulder ridge. What other reflexes would you guys be working? Great. You guys are doing wonderful. I think all of those are wonderful. I would be thinking the thymus as well in order to help with the gas and bloating, the pancreas. I would be also wonderful to start thinking about the referral areas. That's wonderful. You could think about the referral areas for a lot of those, right? We've got kidney, we've got bladder, neck, low back. We have the spine. We could think about where these nerves are innervating into the spine. So we could do the sacrum area. We could work in through that. We could also do in through the bladder meridian, which is on that lateral side. Let's not forget the duodenum reflex. We could definitely work that for gas and bloating. I would also be working the spleen for gas and bloating because in Chinese medicine, the spleen governs the digestive system. It also deals with sort of that perfectionist attitude. I would be working on the thyroid as well for the weight loss and making sure, and you talked about the lymph and getting all of that going. Yeah, I think that's great. It's great. Okay, so there's obviously a lot that's going on, and so there are some of these key reflexes that are going to be tender for everybody, but you do have to be aware, right? So after the toe, we know that the hypothalamus and pituitary is going to be tender. So, hey, how's it going? I know there's some spicy spots in there. How did those feel for you? Was that okay? Was that okay pressure? Was it tolerable for you? Yeah, it's tolerable, but it's kind of coming to the edge, or it's, oh yeah, you could go more, or whatever the case may be. Were there any other questions that or things that you were curious about in terms of being able to determine your key reflexes? If there was a little bit more information, what would it be that you would want to know in order to determine any more of your key reflexes? It's kind of a tough question in the beginning here. Yeah, some age, diet. That's great. Yeah, I think that all of those questions are valid. But we have to think about also what, answering those questions, how does it help me determine what my key reflexes would be? I would be asking about medications because I would want to know if they take regular painkillers. Is my treatment, am I going to get an effective pain scale? And, probably one of the number one questions that I think about is, what is it that you want to deal with? Because I might look at all these symptoms and go, holy Dinah, I need to deal with their this, that, and the other thing. When in actuality, they just came to me for their migraines or whatever it is. So it is important to make sure you know what it is that they came to see you with. Okay. Hopefully that is helpful. Have you guys been able to go in and work through some of the case studies in your workbook? Well, yeah, I think I would challenge you guys to kind of go and look over those a little more, see, what you might do different, or yeah. Yeah, I think sometimes it takes a little bit to, hear it kind of over and over again, and it's a little bit foreign. So yeah. Okay. Well, what I had you guys highlight a ton of different things. You've had a lot of time to study. Is there, what areas are you guys with that material in mind? Are there things that you want to make sure I cover or that I go over? Yes, it's very interesting how a lot of symptoms are correlated. Good. Yes. No, like I said, if all you did was pick top 5 reflexes to begin with, did that for every single person, then told every person the same thing in terms of, for the best results, you come back weekly. Then you got to call me on week 3 and go, now what do I do? But put it back into their court. Well, how do you feel? Right? If everything's pickety boo, great. Let's book you in 3 weeks from now. If they're still struggling, great. Can you manage weekly treatments for 3 more treatments? Go to 6. If you get to 12, reflexology is probably not for you, or I'm not your therapist. It's probably what I would recommend. Yeah, I think what I will do. Well, you know what, you guys? Is there? I think there's people not from Calgary, right, in the class. I know we've got Edmonton in the house. What else do we have for people outside of Calgary? Canmore. We have really on the business, it's just asks how long you should keep your records for and when do you have to start claiming taxes. That's pretty much it. Okay, great. You guys are all in the outskirts of Calgary. I'm jealous. You guys are all in the nice places. Okay, well, maybe send me a separate note and technically middle of April, we should be able to get the ball rolling. Or sorry, May. So, I mean, we're not going to be able to do this as a group, unfortunately. I am in Victoria at the moment. However, my senior therapist at the clinic typically is the one that hosts and manages the written exam. So she is in Calgary, and we should be able to manage a couple things. But obviously, to your comfort level, it's not a rush. We can get it figured out. But yeah, maybe send me a little note, or maybe if I don't hear from you, it means you're cool on the matter, and we'll get you in when it's appropriate and hopefully get you going right away. And if you have other opinions, or if you've got other things that you're dealing with, I know there's kids involved and timing and getting away and all of those things. I will set some dates for the written exam, but I'm not sure exactly when that is. Okay. We're talking about the exam. I think people are, you're kind of itching to get your practical done and start to get that going. So yeah. And I would obviously like you guys to get going on it as well. Get out of here. No, I'm just kidding. Well, we're not exactly a go for the June practical. We're kind of seeing still what's happening. I hope to know more, because if there's regulations on how many people can be in a room together, I have the whole clinic. So, but to be honest with you, I don't have the protection equipment. Should they have those mandatory things? I don't have that available for everybody, and it just becomes kind of a little bit of a disaster. So, yeah, it's still kind of a day by day thing. And yeah, so that's where we're going at with that. And unfortunately, I haven't had any directive from RAC in terms of the exams either with online and such. So we kind of are where we are. Okay, so send me a note about that, or don't send me a note. Your no news is good news, in my opinion. So if I hear no news, then that's great. And then we'll be rolling. We'll be rolling. I mean, practice. Do whatever you feel comfortable. It doesn't matter to me. And get familiar with the processes and stuff like that. Okay. I know we were going to do a little bit more exam prep. We went over a major, the majority of it, and where people feel perhaps the least confident in it. But hopefully that helped know where I'm coming from anyways. I am not looking at chapter 16 nor the answers in the exam answer key. So you're kind of free to convince me that your treatment plan is beneficial. Okay. All right. I think that's it. I think I'm tapped out, unless there were other areas specifically in relation to what you had highlighted under the exam stuff that you had any questions for. Good. I will definitely be looking for more ways to give you marks when you think for yourself than anything. So that's really good. I hope if all goes well, okay, so we have chapter 16. There are references to reflexes. Do you have a page number, Laura? Chapter 16, there are references to these. If you're looking at it on pages 17 and past in chapter 16, then yes, you will see that in musculoskeletal system, T2, a spine, and diaphragm would all help the heart. So T2 would be where the nerves were innervated. Spine, diaphragm. Yeah. You could work those possible reflexes. It's kind of, you could either work the whole spine because you know the spine innervates all of that stuff, right? So why wouldn't spine be worked for every reflex? Brain and spine, right? Like that's just it is most things can be worked for most things. So C5 would be where the thyroid would be innervated. And I think the diaphragm is such a huge muscle for the digestive system and for helping with detoxification. Okay, great. Is it right after you come? So kind of right after you come off of the little bunion area, kind of right after in that little divot, it's probably puffy, but right in that area. Is sort of where I drew it, Katie. Is that sort of what you're thinking? Where it is? That is a very key reflex for the hiatal hernia. It is a reflex indicating acidity, too much acidity in the body. It is also a very strong spleen reflex. No, closer to the toe, like on the bunion area or after the bunion area. If it's right after sort of that MTP joint, okay, so we have the cervical or cervical spine here, right till the middle of the MTP joint. That would be here. And then we start T1 and to 12 to about here. Yes, bunion would be about C7 or the mid, right in the middle of the MTP joint would be C7. So for me, T1 is just kind of right as you come onto the divot of the metatarsal on the medial aspect. Right as you have the nail bed, there's a spleen point there. Right as you come right onto the most distal end of the first metatarsal, you'll have another spleen there. If it's extremely painful there, that's neck. neck, chronic neck. And it could also be that the tendon and the joint is inflamed. So yeah, if it's more like right in that middle of the MTP joint here, it's neck, chronic neck. It can also be throat. This can also be throat. Yeah. You don't want you don't ever want anything to make you sweat. You want if you're going, oof, that feels good, it's so tender, then you're probably doing it right. If you're like, holy bananas, then maybe ease off a bit. Yeah, there can be some doozies, that's for sure. I've been startled by some of my clients. Yeah, it's kind of fun. Okay. Make sure you know your drawings, labeling the anatomy, and those are kind of coming more into there. Know your definition of reflexology. And yeah, okay. So send me a note if you're not into writing an exam anytime soon. And we'll go from there. I will keep in touch with you. So if you haven't heard from me, if I haven't bugged you, and if I haven't gotten confirmation from you, I will bug you. So don't stress about whether or not you've missed something or I haven't sent something out. That's probably the case more of anything. So we'll keep in touch and see how things start turning up. And we'll make sure that you guys move along as quickly and as efficiently as possible. Okay. And we can even make some private arrangements or whatever the case. All right. So I am going to say adios for the evening, and appreciate you guys being on here. Glad that we could kind of work out some more of this stuff. And you guys should feel a lot more comfortable and confident, which is always good. Okay, I'm tuning out, but I'll be on here for another minute if you have any questions. If not, have a really great evening, and we will be in touch.